Hi everybody, welcome to ConnexionCFO, a weekly podcast. Today we're with Kevin McGovern. Kevin McGovern is a CFO / CEO and chairman and non-exec. We're going to talk today mostly about exits, of which Kevin's done a multitude of exits. Welcome, Kevin.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks for having me.
That's good. The first question I've got for any particular business is ultimately everybody's trying to maximize the valuation. And I guess if you want to sell your business today and you haven't really planned for it, sometimes it's quite difficult to maximize that value. But the first question I've got is how do we craft a compelling story around a business to significantly increase its value at the point of exit?
Well, it's a great question. I think I'll answer it slightly differently. I think the answer is you need to be crafting a great narrative around your business, full stop. A great narrative that makes it compelling for customers wanting to come and buy from your business. A great narrative so that your existing shareholders are aligned around the mission, vision, strategy, and execution of the business. Your senior management team are all aligned. And if you have that story clear about what the business is doing, why it's doing it, and who it's doing for, that makes it very easy for a buyer or a potential acquirer of the business to think, well, what can this business do for me? Because I think the most important thing is the guy on the other side of the table, the potential acquirer of your business. He's interested in what your business does, but what he's more interested in is what his business does, where his business is going, what his strategy is, and what's on his roadmap, and what problem you can solve for him. So is he trying to build up product, geography, market share, talent, all of the above? And he needs to be able to understand that from your business pretty quickly. Otherwise he'll move on to the next one.
Okay, I guess that's quite nice.
Clarity around strategy. What you do, for whom, where you do it, what problem you solve. And I think that is the single biggest thing you can do in order to maximize value.
Yeah, that makes complete sense, because the number of businesses I've seen that have been approached by potential acquirers, and at that point it's very hard to change any of those elements in your strategy, isn't it? So
I think the other thing is the biggest single driver of value is competitive tension in a buying process. And competitive tension comes from multiple people wanting to acquire you, hopefully, but also the real or perceived option of not selling yourself in the first place. And if people are clear on where you're going and how you're getting there, and that you're happily achieving on that strategy and you don't need to sell, well, in order to take you off that path, someone needs to offer a premium to you in order to do it. So that clarity of strategy and vision is crucial all round.
And let's say I'm running my business and I get approached, somebody looking to acquire me. How do I go about creating that competitive tension? Because I haven't engaged any corporate finance house. So how do I go about just increasing that competitive tension?
So again, another good point. So I think if a company's shareholders and board are considering an exit now or at some point in the future, SMP, it needs to be strategic in its objectives. What do we want to achieve? It needs to be methodical in terms of its execution, and it needs to be planned, thoroughly. And in most instances, a business will decide that it wants to sell itself. The shareholders will make that decision. The board will be charged with, executing against that. And you can plan that, months or in some instances years in advance. And actually, if you've gone through that thought process, that's excellent. If you've done some of the planning, that's even better, because then you are better able to react if there's an inbound that you didn't see coming, and you're not all scrabbling around like mad, trying to react to an inbound. Because the challenge with an inbound inquiry is you don't know what your business is worth, because you're relying on the market to value that. And so if you haven't gone out and tested the market, it is very difficult to assess whether or not an inbound offer is the right offer for the business.
Okay. And so how do you, what situations have you come across, or do you feel are the key success factors that makes a successful exit and a successful transition?
So for a successful exit, I think planning is the key thing. And planning starts with, what are our objectives? So the shareholders of a business, which may or may not include, the founder, the management team, the board, it depends on the size of scale of the business. But this is relevant for everyone from the sort of owner, manager, entrepreneur up to the VC-backed business or the PE-backed business where I do a lot of my work, is ensuring that the objectives are really clear. And that might be a combination of financial and non-financial, but how much do we want to earn from this transaction? How much risk are we prepared to take? Are we prepared to have it? Do we want it all up front? Do we want it in arrears? What do we want to do afterwards? Are we prepared to work for the acquirer for a 1, 2, 3 year period? Or do we want to exit? And I think having those objectives clearly set out in advance, and in the case where you've got a number of shareholders, ensuring that those are aligned objectives, enables you to then benchmark any offer that you get, whether or not that's an unsolicited inbound, or indeed if you've gone out to market and you've got a whole series of potential acquirers. It allows you to benchmark any offers against those against that criteria that you've got, because you're not going to be able to hit all of those objectives. You mentioned valuation earlier. I mean, valuation is only one metric, and I would argue it's important, but it's probably not the most important. The most important is the structure of that valuation and the risk associated with it. But it all comes back to, in terms of delivering success is gauged by how well you hit or exceed your objectives, rather than sort of an absolute number. So in my experience, going back to the original question, what is the principal driver of success? It's companies and their shareholders who are very clear on what their objectives are. They're aligned around what those objectives are, and they can then work together in order to hit those objectives.
And thanks, Kevin. So you talked about the structure of the valuation. So how does IP impact that valuation? Because at the end of the day, let's just say you're a SaaS-based business. You've spent a lot of money on the platform and the technology, and it has definitely some competitive advantage in the marketplace. Is that more reflected by the clients that you're bringing on board and the key metrics, or the technology you've developed?
I think that the challenge with IP on its own is it's extremely subjective and down to the potential acquirer, because typically a business has built a technology stack. They've got some brand awareness around it. They've got all of that IP, and if an acquirer is looking to move into a completely new market, which is where your IP sits, and therefore values all of it on a standalone basis, then they will place quite a high premium on that IP in terms of being able to get into market quickly. If, on the other hand, the acquiring business has got 70% of the functionality itself, actually they want to acquire 30%. Well, actually they might value the business based on how easy it is to integrate your technology to their legacy stack, and then how easy it is to turn off that remaining 70% to save costs, and is there a risk that customers are going to churn? So with technology and IP, it's really your valuation is maximized significantly the more you understand the rationale and the strategy and the technical strategy of the acquiring business. And that's very much linked to the sort of previous point that we talked about in terms of how to maximize that valuation. The better that you know your potential acquirers, the more intimately you understand their strategy and their roadmap, their technology, the people, the management, etc., the better you are able to pitch in your business in a way that helps them and makes it easy for the acquirer to acquire and then integrate your business. going out cold to someone where you really don't understand their business or their technology stack makes it much more difficult for you to pitch your proposition, with a strategic premium on it.
I understand that. So we talk about IP. Now, what about the team? Let's say you've got how much does the quality of your team, your executive team, or even people below you, and that next level impact the valuation?
Again, it's without trying to cop out of the question, it depends. If you've got an acquirer that is sophisticated, a large company, lots of expertise already in place, then and if you have got a business that is relatively generic, then they might be acquiring the revenue and not place a huge amount of value on the team. The team will be there for a handover period, 3, 6, 9, 12 months. They may or may not continue with the business if they want to or not. If, on the other hand, you've got a very specialized team who know the market well, the technologies, the technology, they are experts within that piece of the market, they have really deep customer relationships, then a huge amount of value is attributed to the team. So I think what that means is, as a business is considering whether or not it should sell itself, that piece of planning around understanding the different buyer pools and what those buyer pools might value will help you determine where you need to focus your sales pitch. Are you going to double down on the team? Is it about the quality of your customer base and your revenue? Is it around the technology? And the lens I always like to look through is, what would the acquirer put out in their press release the day after they've bought your business? We are XYZ Limited, the global leaders in this. We have acquired this business because of the fantastic team, their industry knowledge here, the product that they bring to the market. And I think people need to be quite brutal with that self-assessment of what have we really got that's not valuable to us, but valuable to somebody else.
And so that brings me to my next question, which is all about earnouts and what is acceptable or not acceptable. And I know that's has quite a width in terms of potential answers, but so I'm going to try and narrow that down a little bit. I'm really big on strategy and then creating a really strong team underneath. But does that if I have an amazing team underneath me and I'm just doing the nice strategy, does that diminish my earnout period or would it increase my earnout period?
So there are a few things, share options being one, but there are a few things that are sort of more heavily debated than earnouts, and it's always a trade-off, right? It's a trade-off for the buyer, who wants certainty. It's a trade-off for the seller, who wants certainty and is trying to mitigate risk. I think earnout is all around, or in any merger and acquisition deal. An M&A deal is all about the assignment of opportunity and assignment of opportunity and risk. So from the buyer and the seller perspective, no one knows how that business is going to perform after it's been acquired, especially if you start integrating it into the acquired business. And so the seller typically thinks the business is worth more than it is. The buyer thinks it's worth less, but it might be in the future. So the clearer you are on the strategy and the roadmap of your own business, the better able you are to gauge future success. But for any earnout to be successful, and my counsel to anyone who is considering a large element of their consideration to be via earnout is, you've got to spend that upfront time before the deal is closed, really planning out in detail what that earnout period looks like. Is it a financial earnout? Is it milestone based? Is it dependent on the team? Who is key in order to be there? And don't get wrapped up in the deal. Constantly stand back and say, does this make commercial sense? Rather than earnout sense, because I've seen it time and time again where actually the commercial intent of both parties isn't reflected at all in what the earnout says. And that leads to a real sense of confusion post acquisition.
Yeah, absolutely. And in terms of the integration, because I guess the integration, if that integration goes wrong, could have a material impact on that earnout at all. But as a seller, what say do I have over that integration?
Well, I think if it's incumbent on you as a seller and and the advisors that you get in to ensure that you've got a huge say in the integration. If there is a large element of your your sale price based on that, and it doesn't need to be an earnout. It could be an earnout. It could be deferred payment. It could be payment held back. It might be reps, warranties, or other commercial conditions that you that you are signed up to. But generally speaking, when I'm advising sellers, it's if there is a large element of earnout, you have to have those earnout terms and conditions absolutely bottomed out. Your obligations to the buyer and the buyer's obligations to you, in order to protect both sides.
Okay, so we're sitting opposite a table. I'm a buyer, you're a seller. Oh, sorry, and you're working on behalf of a seller. What do you feel are the, in terms of the negotiation points, the key negotiation points? What are you really trying to succeed on?
So it absolutely depends on what those overall objectives are of the sellers and what you're trying to optimize for, because you can't optimize for everything. So is it the maximum amount of cash on day one that I can walk away with risk-free and no one can come back to it? And you can normally negotiate that. Yeah, there's a discount for doing that and taking the certainty. Or actually, are you trying to maximize, you're already financially secure, you may have done another deal, historically, or your life, your priorities are different. And so you're prepared to roll the dice and actually go for a much higher valuation based on future performance, because you really back yours and the buyer's ability to integrate. So it's a trade-off between that ultimate price, the structure, what's up front, what's deferred, what's guaranteed, what's contingent. If it's contingent, what is it contingent on? Is it milestones, time, team, earn-out mechanics, financial performance? So that's all the sort of upside considerations. And then what could damage the deal? What reps and warranties am I signing up to? What are the guarantees? What are the personal clawbacks? Am I taking some of the consideration in shares? What could happen to their share price? What does the buyer's cap table look like? So, people often talk about the price, and my counsel back to people is, price is interesting, but you can only understand price in the context of the entire deal. And to go answer your question in terms of negotiating, you need to be really clear. What am I prioritizing? What am I optimizing for? And let's negotiate for that outcome. And understanding what the guy on the other side of the table, what he's trying to optimize for as well, because a good deal works for both parties. And it has to be win-win for both people. And you can only do that by being very clear on your objectives and having a pretty good understanding of the guy on the other side of the table, their objectives.
And I guess that comes back to your point right at the very start, is it clarity about your strategy, whether you're in a sale process or not. Because ultimately, if the buyer has, they might be able to have a market share that they can bring to your business. They might be able to have product innovation that they can bring to your business, customers that they can bring to your business, and if you can see that and you can see the synergies, then maybe a deferred earnout is actually really attractive.
Absolutely, and I think that sort of the single biggest thing I think that owners of businesses can do to maximize their value if they're considering a sale of the business at some point in the future is to have that external focus. Think about who the potential buyers might be, which way the market is moving in terms of market developments, what they have got that is valuable not just to them but to that third party, and then get out there and have those conversations early. Validate that hypothesis by talking to the people on the other side of the table, and those relationships can start months or years in advance. And in my experience, people are able to drive a much more strategic transaction, price and all of those other factors with people that they know well and people that they've got to know well over, over months and years.
Yep. So on that point, if I'm looking to sell, when should I be looking to? Sorry, I think there's two parts to this question. There's when should I be looking to advise or engage external advisors for a sale process? I think that's quite different to when you might engage a CFO or a CMO or C-suite people, because I think you should actually do that earlier in the piece, and you're not specifically doing that for an exit part. But if you're going down the route of doing it, saying, like, yes, we do want to exit our business, when is the ideal time to engage some type of corporate advisory or someone like yourself?
Yeah, so I think your answer is, or your hypothesis there is spot on. The earlier that you can start thinking about it, the better, because there are a whole series of things that you need to get sorted in advance. So you need all of your housekeeping items should be up to date. It's on everybody's important but non-urgent list, and there is nothing that kills a transaction faster than just not being prepared for it. So the earlier that you can get all of that in place, with the right C-suite management team, the better. And then typically, my recommendation on hiring an external advisor would be, circa 6 to 9 months before your anticipated transaction date. The best deals and the most strategic deals are ones where you are not rushed and you have got optionality and you are well prepared, and it takes time to be well prepared. And typically, transactions take, dependent on how well you know the market, you could do one in 4 to 5 months if you've got a very small number of people that you know intimately well. If you want to go out to a longer list and explore the market a little bit more, then it's sort of 6 to 9 months. But it can take longer. I've worked on transactions that have taken sort of circa 18 months because people have really wanted to take their time in order to get that premium deal across the line.
Cool. And just before we finish up, any other last bits of advice or thoughts?
No, I think we've covered most of it there. I think what closing thoughts are selling your business is no different to selling anything else. You have got to make your asset, your product, as attractive, and then really have a clear idea about what it is that the buyers want. And that is sort of first and foremost of the process and the most important thing. As it comes then through down to sort of execution, that all follows. And it shouldn't be the process that becomes the objective. The process is a means to an end, not the end itself.
So I said the last question, but I have one more question. You're going through an exit process, and how much do you of that process do you outsource so it doesn't impact your day-to-day business?
Great question. Comes down to how well prepared you are, and how well you know that team. I mean, the one thing that is true, regardless of your size and scale, is selling a business is a huge amount of work. It will take the senior people in the business out of that day-to-day business for anywhere from 50 to 100% of their time for sort of weeks or months. So you've got to have the capacity to do that, and you either bring in external resource to run that and give you the capacity, or you have to backfill the resource if you're going to take it out of your senior team. But it's a huge amount of work normally for the CEO, the CFO, your COO, your CTO if it's an IP centric business, and that really cannot be underestimated.
Right. Kevin, thank you so much for your chat. I really enjoyed it. If there's anybody out there that's looking to do an exit process, please get in touch with either myself or Kevin. And thank you very much.
Great stuff. Good to talk. Thanks, Peter.
Bye.